Hello class, I'm working out of your Algebra 2 book, 4.1, Organizing Data with Matrices. In a little while I'll also include number 30 in your actual assignment with the general matrices information. To get started, dimensions of a matrix are stated in rows by columns. So rows by columns. In this matrix, are the rows first, there are 2. Columns second, there are 2, like columns on a house. And this is a 2 by 2 matrix. Let's try another one. In this matrix, there's 1 row by 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. It has the dimensions of 1 by 4. Each number in the matrix is called an element, and each element has a label and position. Calls it a pattern. Watch for the pattern. In the first position, we could call that element B11. If we go on, we'd have B12, B13, and so on. And look what happens. Jump to the next numbers family, B21, B22, and B23, and so on. Jumps 10 from 11 to 21 in label. The next row, B31, B32, B33, and the last row, B41, B42, and B43. If we set this equal to a matrix with values for the elements, such as this one, and we're asked to tell the value of a certain element, for instance, what is the value of B32 in this matrix? It would be 12. Let's try some more. What's the value of B43? Maybe 16. Where's the value of B31? 11. The value of B12? 6. In number 30 on your assignment, you're given a graph, and the graph looks like this. It's plotted here at -2, 2 with an A, -1, -2 with a B, origin for C, and 1, -2 for D, and 2, 2 for E. Makes a W. And you're asked to put these plotted points in matrix C form. You're looking at the two parts of a plotted point, the X and the Y. So what happens is if your rows are the X's and Y's, then you have information that emerges from the column. So for instance, here it has to plot W2 by 5 for this graph. I'm going to notice the X's and the Y's. So the A plotted point is at -2, 2. The B again is at -1, -2. The origin C is at 0, 0. D is at 1, -2. And E is at 2, 2. For your matrix C, if you consider plotting the X's on the top row and the Y's on the bottom row in this order, you would have the X's for the top row, and we could plot those and say -2, -1, zero, 1, 2. If we look at the Y's in order, we could plot those as 2, -2, 0, -2, 2. Created a matrix with the X's on the top row and the Y's on the bottom row, organizing those to match the original plotted points. And you created a matrix of 2 rows by 5 columns. The whole point of a presentation of data in a matrix form is to help us see data more clearly. It's also how a computer codes and does data. So we can present the data in a matrices form and work with it and find out a lot of information, especially when we plug it into a graphing calculator and do special functions with it to find out more about the basic values. It's pretty interesting. So how do we transfer graphed data to a matrices? This will be kind of like numbers 21 through 28 in your assignment. So we're going to have a graph of some students and their test scores and their averages. So we'll call it test score average over a couple of years. So we're going to have the possibility of having a 70, an 80, a 90, and 100 on those test scores. And the students are going to be Ben, Barry, and Betsy. There's 2 years associated with these test scores. How Ben, Barry, and Betsy do in 2020 versus how they do in 2021. We'll color code those on the graph. So Ben in 2020 averaged at 90 for his test scores. Barry in 2020 averaged at 70 for his test scores. And Betsy in 2020 averaged at 100 for her test scores. Up here. And in 2021, Ben averaged at 80 for his test scores. Maybe he took an advanced class. And Barry studied really hard and averaged this year 90 for his test scores. And Betsy in 2021 averaged at 90 for her test scores. Maybe she got a job. Okay. So notice we have 2 years and 3 students. And you're going to be asked to create a matrix from this information at T subscript 2 rows by 3 columns. So if there are 2 years and 3 students, then the rows by columns are set in years to students, and the elements are actually the test scores. So we're going to set up our matrix. We're going to say, okay, for Ben, he had 2 years, 1 in each row for the 2 rows, at 90 and 80 for the average. I'll color code those just so you can see where they're sitting here. So that's Ben. That's what he got for those 2 years. And then Barry got a 70 average, and then the next year he got an 80 average. Oh, 90 average. Studied really hard, improved his scores. And then Betsy got a 100 average for the first year, the 2020. And then she had a 90 average. So the rows represent what years those test scores happened. What were the actual test scores? That's the actual elements. And the columns represent the students. So as we can see, we built this matrix because Ben had a 90 and an 80. Barry had a 70 and a 90. And Betsy had a 100 and a 90 in the years 2020 and 2021. That creates a 2 by 3 matrix where the elements are actually the test scores, the rows are the years, and the columns are the students. Look that over. So what if you're asked what the value of T22 is, that element. And what does it mean? Okay, so T11 is our first element. T21 is our second row, first element. And so T22 is right here. We built that from Barry's test scores, and it represents 2021. So the answer here is the element is 90 in T22. The average test score Barry received in 2021. So I hope that helps you get started on working with 21 through 28 and organizing your data into a matrix form and knowing what that data means in each element. I hope this helps, and I will see you soon.